Hello, my name is Alan Friedman. I'm Senior Program Director for Special Education for the Allegheny Intermediate Unit. I'll be discussing the topics of the Professional Educator Discipline Act and maintaining professional and appropriate relationships with students. Let's begin. The Professional Educator Discipline Act created the Professional Standards and Practices Commission. The role of the commission is threefold. First, it is an advisory board to the State Board of Education and the Department of Education and recommends rules and regulations for teacher certification and the standards for college and university teaching degree programs. Second, it is assigned with the adjudication role as it administers the Professional Educator Discipline System, which it oversees. Third, the Commission is charged with creating and updating the Code of Professional Practice and Conduct for Educators. The mission of the Professional Standards and Practices Commission is to provide leadership for improving the quality of education in the Commonwealth by establishing high standards for preparation, certification, practice, and ethical conduct in the teaching profession. The Commission consists of classroom teachers, public school administrators, including a commissioned officer, someone from higher education, and 2 members from the general public, one of whom is on a school board. The statutory authority of the Commission extends to all certified professionals, charter school staff members, and it is proposed that private academic school professionals and independent contractors who work within school settings also be brought into the Commission's jurisdiction. One of the roles of the Professional Standards and Practices Commission is to generate a code of conduct. The guiding principles revolve around a commitment to excellence, a commitment to the value and dignity of each individual, a commitment to act in a fiduciary capacity and to protect students, and lastly, a commitment to modeling societal responsibilities. The code specifically prohibits a variety of activities. Some of those include accepting employment in an area when not properly certified, discriminating against individuals, interfering with a student or colleague's exercise of political or civil rights, and accepting gratuities, gifts, or favors that might impair or appear to impair professional judgment. Also included in the code prohibition are exploiting professional relationships, misrepresenting evaluations and/or misrepresenting subject matter or curriculum, sexually harassing students or colleagues, or engaging in relationships of a sexual nature with students. And finally, withholding evidence from authorities concerning violations of the code, using coercion to influence professional decisions of colleagues, and threatening, coercing, or discriminating against a colleague who in good faith reports actual or suspected violations of law, regulations, or standards. There are times when an educator's misconduct rises to the level that requires statewide discipline. Activities that are both criminal and non-criminal can result in disciplinary actions. The areas of non-criminal misconduct that rise to the level of discipline include incompetency, intemperance, negligence, cruelty, immorality, violations of the Act of May 29, 1931, and violations of the Code of Conduct. These are often referred to as the 7 deadly sins in education. We will review each one individually. Incompetency is the continuing or persistent mental or intellectual inability or incapacity to perform one's job. Intemperance is a loss of self-control or self-restraint, which may result from excessive conduct. Negligence is the continuing or persistent action or omission in violation of a duty which was established by laws, rules, policies, and directives. Cruelty is the intentional, malicious, and unnecessary infliction of physical or psychological pain upon living creatures, particularly human beings. Immorality is conduct which offends the morals of the Commonwealth and is a bad example for the youth whose ideals an educator has a duty to foster and elevate. Those criminal activities which could result in educator discipline fall under two categories. The first, a conviction or indictment of a crime involving moral turpitude, or second, a conviction or indictment of a crime listed in Section 111E. Moral turpitude is defined as that element and personal misconduct in the private and social duties in which a person owes to fellow human beings or to society in general, which characterizes the act done as an act of baseness, vileness, or depravity, and contrary to the accepted and customary rule of right and duty between two human beings. It also includes conduct unknowingly contrary to justice, honesty, or good morals, as well as intentional, knowing, or reckless conduct causing bodily injury to another, or intentional knowing or reckless conduct which by physical menace puts another in fear of imminent serious bodily injury. It is important to note in this definition that the misconduct may occur in private and/or social duties outside of school and is done knowingly and intentionally. Here is a list of some of those crimes which fall under the definition of moral turpitude as defined by the Commission. Here is a list of crimes listed under Section 111E that would result in revocation of an educator's certificate or eligibility to work in a charter school. This slide represents a disciplinary process which reflects that both PDE and the Commission have a role in the process. It starts with the initiation of a complaint, which then is evaluated to determine its legal sufficiency, which involves a level of probable cause. If it is determined that a notice of charges is provided to the educator, he or she is offered an opportunity for a hearing, which may result in some type of adjudication. Types of discipline that are available to the Commission include private reprimands, public reprimands, suspensions, revocation, and surrender of one's certificate in lieu of discipline. As stated earlier, the process begins with the filing of a complaint. When filing a complaint, it is very important to be specific when describing the conduct and to include information about what happened, who was involved, when it occurred, and where it occurred. The complaint must be signed in the presence of a notary, and their stamp and signature must be affixed to the complaint document. It is then sent to PDE. This slide provides more specific information about the types of information required when filing a complaint. It is interesting to note that in addition to a detailed description of the educator's professional misconduct, including the date or dates on which the conduct occurred, copies of documents that support the complaints, including police reports, court reports, medical bills, emails, text messages, and correspondences, are to be included with the complaint. Additionally, any information filed with other agencies, such as a school district or charter school, the police, children and youth services, etc., are to be provided. As previously stated, there is a complaint form which can be found on the PDE website. Just type Educator Misconduct Complaint Form into the search box, and this is the form that you will access. Here's a flowchart indicating the processes followed when a complaint is received by PDE. The complaint and provided information is reviewed by PDE, and a decision is made as to whether there is enough fact to warrant discipline or not. If not, the complaint is dismissed. If there are enough facts to warrant discipline, PDE will investigate further to determine whether there is probable cause to believe that there are grounds for discipline. If probable cause is found, PDE may conduct a full investigation or transmit its findings to the local school board to allow them to investigate. If probable cause is not found, written notices are issued to the professional educator, the complaining party, and the employer, and the complaint is dismissed. PDE will accept a complaint filed within 1 year of the occurrence of the alleged action. However, complaints involving sexual abuse or the exploitation of a child may be filed beyond the date of the occurrence, up to 5 years after the child or student reaches 18 years old. If the alleged action is of a continuing nature, the date of the occurrence is considered the last date on which the conduct occurred. If an educator has been disciplined by an out-of-state licensing authority, it is considered conclusive evidence of misconduct in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. The professional educator has 30 days to demonstrate that this discipline would result in a grave injustice. The discipline is substantially different from what would have been imposed for a similar conduct in Pennsylvania, or the procedure used in that other state did not provide due process. Within 30 days after the educator's response window, the Commission will decide whether or not to impose the identical or comparable discipline. If the educator is indicted of a crime listed in 111E of the Public School Code, or a crime involving moral turpitude, or a similar crime in federal courts or the court of another state, territory, or nation, the Commission must revoke the professional educator's certificate. The Commission can reinstate a certificate upon receipt of a certified court document establishing that conviction was reversed on appeal. If an educator is indicted of a crime under Section 111E of the Public School Code, or a crime involving moral turpitude, and if the Commission determines that the educator poses a threat to the health, safety, or welfare of a student or other individual in the school, the Commission may suspend the professional educator's certificate. This suspension shall be lifted if the Commission receives notification that the charges have been withdrawn or overturned. On occasion, the Commission has accepted an affidavit that the educator will not be employed in a position related to educating or working with children in lieu of suspension. All information related to any complaints or proceedings shall remain confidential until discipline other than a private reprimand is ordered. Anyone who releases information received in a meeting or hearing or through any disciplinary proceedings without authorization of the committee is guilty of a misdemeanor of the third degree. With regard to immunity from liability, no person shall be subject to civil liability for filing a complaint or providing information to or cooperating with PDE or the Commission in the course of an investigation. If a person provides false information, that person is not protected from civil liability. After the complaint has been filed with PDE, preliminary findings are reported to the school board that employs that professional educator. Then, the school board will investigate and decide whether to pursue disciplinary action in addition to whatever sanctions PDE or the Commission have deemed appropriate. Within 90 days, the school board reports to PDE if it has pursued disciplinary action and if additional action by the Commission is necessary. The school board notifies the professional educator of any recommendation and finally reports to PDE any findings and summary of evidence or any other relevant information. After PDE completes its investigation, it has a few options. The first is the dismissal of charges. The second is a determination that the school board has imposed an appropriate discipline. The third option is that PDE may initiate a hearing. If this last option is chosen, PDE has 30 days to send written notice to the professional educator advising him or her of the charges and the right to request a hearing within 30 days. Currently, administrators of school districts are required to report the following information to PDE: the dismissal of a certified employee for cause, a criminal indictment or conviction for a crime, or information regarding physical injury to a student or child as a result of negligence or malice, or sexual abuse or exploitation of the student or child by a professional educator. Failure to report may result in disciplinary action against the administrator. If a hearing is required, the process begins with the Commission appointing a hearing officer. The Department of Education acts as the prosecutor and must establish that grounds for discipline exist. The professional educator has a right to be represented by counsel and to present evidence and cross-examine witnesses. All hearings are closed to the public unless the defendant requests an open hearing. When the hearing is completed, PDE will recommend discipline, and the hearing officer has 60 days to issue a decision. The Department of Education or the defendant may appeal the hearing officer's decision to the Commission and delay the imposition of discipline. If the appeal finds in favor of the defendant, the records of the complaint and proceedings will be expunged from the educator's professional files and PDE file. Any professional educator whose certificate has been suspended, revoked, or surrendered may apply to the Commission for reinstatement. The Commission considers whether the conduct warranted discipline, the past conduct of the applicant's current attitude towards past conduct, rehabilitation efforts, and letters of reference in support or opposition to reinstatement. Under certain circumstances, the Commission will not reinstate a certificate, including a finding of guilt by the Commission for sexual abuse or exploitation, or if an educator's certificate was surrendered in lieu of discipline for conduct related to sexual abuse or exploitation. Just to note that all interested parties, regardless of their profession, are considered permissive reporters with a duty to protect students and children. Currently, under the Professional Educators Discipline Act, only chief school administrative officers are identified as mandated reporters in Pennsylvania and must file a report about an educator who has been dismissed for cause if there is reasonable belief of sexual abuse or exploitation or physical injury as a result of negligence or malice, or if the educator has been indicted or convicted of a crime involving moral turpitude or Section 111E. It is incumbent upon every professional educator to understand the ethical and fiduciary obligations to protect students. The definition of fiduciary is a person in a position of authority whom the law obligates to act solely on behalf of the person he or she represents and in good faith. There is an inherent imbalance of power between teacher and student, and a teacher must not abuse it or allow others to abuse it. Mandated reporting laws are in place to protect students from abuse and teachers who report abuse, encouraging educators to act ethically. This slide represents some of the proposed changes to the Act. Of particular note is the bullet number 2, which involves identifying sexual misconduct as a specific basis for discipline and redefining the term to make it consistent with its use in other states. Proposed legislation would include behavior such as sending a student sexually explicit text messages. Here are some proposed amendments to the Professional Educators Discipline Act for your review. Here is the proposed definition of sexual misconduct for your review. Please note the consent of a child or student to engage in sexual misconduct may not be a defense or a mitigating factor in any discipline proceeding under this Act. Just to restate, the age of the child is irrelevant. If the child is still enrolled in school, this definition applies. Some of the challenges to maintaining appropriate boundaries include working and living in small communities, the growing informality between teachers and students, and the use of technologies, especially in social networking. Educators should work hard to confine their passion for teaching to instruction. They should be aware of their own vulnerabilities and recognize whose needs are being met by interactions with students. And it is of utmost importance that the professional educator maintain his or her privacy and personal brand. Every professional educator must recognize his or her position as a role model. Because of the teacher's position of authority in the classroom or the community, there is an expectation that the teacher will model acceptable behavior for their students. Teachers are held to a high standard of conduct and ethics. When the standards are not upheld, the community demands consequences. As we see on an almost daily basis, teachers are making bad choices to engage in relationships with students. Teachers may feel flattered by their students' attention or may be inclined to treat their students like peers if they are close in age and share the same interests or preferences. However, it is incumbent upon all teachers to safeguard the well-being of their students from dangers inside and outside of school. Teachers must zealously guard against putting their needs ahead of their students' needs. In order to maintain appropriate relationship with students, the professional educator must understand the concept of boundaries. Boundaries are both external, represented in the Commission's Code of Conduct, and internal, which is the educator's own ethical compass. Boundaries can become blurred or ambiguous when relationships are formed. These could take the shape as confidant, friend, lover, or anything outside the realm of the teacher. Boundaries are often endangered when the educator is personally vulnerable and when the student is particularly vulnerable. Educators must be aware of their own needs and be cognizant of the lengths some students will go for attention. At a minimum, professional educators should not make comments of a personal nature or suggestive in tone to a student. They should not share information of a personal nature with students or give personal gifts to students. They should be especially cognizant of placing themselves in situations which could be construed as posing a risk to the student or facilitating an inappropriate relationship with students. Please note, educators have no reasonable expectation to privacy for materials viewed, accessed, written, or stored on a school district computer. Professional educators need to be cognizant of their own vulnerabilities. The attention, admiration, and sometimes adoration bestowed by students on a teacher can be overwhelming, particularly when a teacher is emotionally vulnerable. When a teacher is vulnerable, he or she may view students as peers, suffer from adult relationship issues, be immature, exhibit a need for attention, a sense of invulnerability, absence of developed personal moral compass, or a lack of personal crisis management skills. It is good practice for a teacher to preface every decision by considering whose needs are being met by my course of action. The next two slides present acceptable and unacceptable behaviors for professional educators. Those acceptable behaviors include fostering a safe, ethical learning environment for students, referring students for counseling if needed, ensuring that actions are always in the best interest of students, and always being mindful of your reputation in the community. Those judged to be unacceptable include engaging in activities directed towards developing a relationship with a student beyond the recognized boundaries of the teacher-student relationship, regardless of the student's age, pursuing any sexual or romantic contact with the student, regardless of the student's age or parental consent, exchanging notes, emails, or other communication with the student of a personal nature, and inviting students to your home or meeting with students in isolated or private situations. In our profession, there are many gray areas which may have innocent intentions but give the appearance of impropriety. Activities that may reasonably raise concerns include meeting alone with a student outside of the learning environment or in a tutoring session, social networking with students, or giving or soliciting gifts. Professional educators should be aware of the red flags of grooming behavior in themselves and others. Grooming behavior involves purposeful action taken with the goal of befriending or establishing an emotional connection with a child or student in order to lower the child or student's inhibitions in preparation for sexual activity or exploitation of that child or student. Unintentional grooming involves engaging in inappropriate friendship leading to the slippery slope of misconduct. Please take a moment to read this slide. As stated in a previous slide, it is imperative that professional educators maintain their personal brand. As we see constantly in the news, professional educators are destroying their brand by engaging in social media with their students. This often results in student-teacher boundary issues. As you recall, as a professional educator, there are high community and legal expectations. The perception of the community can affect your reputation and professional effectiveness, which then can have an impact on the job and ultimately your certification. I purposely placed this slide in the presentation for a second time to emphasize the importance of this information. Again, boundary issues lead to educator misconduct. Be aware that boundaries are both external and internal. Boundaries can become blurred or ambiguous when dual relationships are formed. Always remember that your relationship is that of a teacher and not a friend, confidant, or counselor. Boundaries are endangered when an educator is personally vulnerable and when their students are particularly vulnerable. Consequently, an educator must be aware of their own needs and those of their students. This slide includes a list of tips for educators to keep in mind so they do not fall into the slippery slope of boundary violations. I've included this website reference. It can be accessed on the PDE website under the Professional Standards and Practices Commission tab. I reference the Educator Ethics and Conduct Toolkit as a reference for both new and experienced educators to update their knowledge with regard to the topics presented in this presentation. Words to live by. Whenever you do a thing, act as if the whole world is watching. We've discussed the Professional Educators Discipline Act and maintaining appropriate relationships with students. Now let's check for understanding. Who is covered under the jurisdiction of the Professional Educator Discipline Act? All certified professionals, charter school staff members, private academic school employees, independent contractors, or all of the above. Currently, only answers A and B are correct. Answers C and D are part of proposed amendments to the law. Educators cannot be disciplined for sexual misconduct with a student if the student consents to the sexual activity. True or false? The answer is false. Intentional, knowing, or reckless conduct causing bodily injury to another, or intentional, knowing, or reckless conduct which, by physical menace, puts another in fear of imminent serious bodily injury, is part of the Professional Educator Discipline Act definition of negligence, indecent assault, moral turpitude, or immorality. The answer is C, moral turpitude. Educators have a reasonable expectation to privacy in materials viewed, accessed, written, or stored on a school district computer. True or false? The answer is false. There is no reasonable expectation of privacy on district-owned equipment. Which of the following are considered the 7 deadly sins of non-criminal misconduct? Incompetency, cruelty, forgery, immorality, violation of the code of conduct, stalking, negligence, indecent assault, violation of the Act of May 29, 1931, and intemperance. The answers are A, B, D, E, G, I, and J. Forgery, stalking, and indecent assault are considered criminal misconduct. Thank you for your attention to this important information.